Welcome, folks, once again to Mental Health Matters on WPVM 1037, the voice of Asheville. I'm Todd Weatherly, your host, mental health professional and therapeutic consultant. My guest today is Beth Lemmel. I'm glad to say an old friend of mine with Lemmel Employment Coaching here in Asheville, North Carolina. Her career journey eventually led her into the field of mental health. I had a little something to do with it, where Beth learned to navigate the world of job hunting through the eyes of a population of individuals filled with unrivaled talent, but who at times had lost confidence in their place in the world. It was an experience that shaped her understanding of a job not just as a necessary tool for survival, but as a baseline for a meaningful and fulfilling life. Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So good to be here. Thanks, Todd. I love that
There's
you brought up that you had something to do with me getting into mental health. You might
way
be
back in the
surprised how
day. I
often
mean,
that comes up.
we've known each other 15 years now. Is that right?
That sounds right. That sounds
Wow.
right.
You
Through your
know,
brother.
that's right. That's right. The not only for Cooper Reese, when you and I both were there, but for many other, you know, therapeutic programs and people in the therapeutic world. High Five Coffee was definitely like the office away from the office.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. There were
It
a lot of different programs that would kind of
I
post
mean,
the high five.
every program in the daggum city that is, within a 10-mile radius, or operates anywhere close to Asheville, goes to High Five, and we would all like, hey, and
Oh
we
yeah.
were that was back in the manager days, and then you came over to the dark side. Um,
Yeah, I was managing High Five and had Andromache, my daughter is 15 now, but she was little at that time. And I think I was just kind of like at the point where I was like ready to start career. And I didn't know what that was going to be, but I knew it was going to be in health somehow. Um,
right,
and started to take classes or explore different avenues. And one of the things that I did was an EMT basic course. And when I got through that course, I was like, I am not going through anymore. I'm not doing the intermediate. I'm not doing the paramedic. I just need to get a job. I
right.
want to start working. And I remember I sat down at High Five on my day off and I was writing my resume. Do you remember this? And
What
you
I
walked
do
in.
remember this. Holy cow! Yes, I remember this.
I tell this story all the time to people that I job coach because it's a great example of tell people what you're looking for. This is how networking works, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm writing my resume, I'm banging my head against the table, trying to figure out like how I want it to read. What even is the job that I'm looking for with my EMT basic background and my, coffee shop management and service industry stuff. And you walk in to get coffee, and I'm like, Todd, come here. I'm like, sit down. I know you read these things and I know you hire people and do interviews. So tell me, read this and tell me, would you hire me? Would you give me an interview? Are you impressed by this? Give me some feedback.
And I said,
And do you remember
well,
what you said?
I would hire you. I would hire you. Would you like to work for me right now?
Yeah, that's how I started in mental health. Literally, you were like, I actually need you like this, you and your
Like
credentials. I need
today. Like I literally
today.
need you today.
And I was like, oh, well, that's unexpected. I never thought about working in mental health, but wow, I'd actually get to use some of this. Well, as an ENT basic, you are trained really well to give people their own medication and to apply band-aids as needed.
Right.
So the job that you had was working as a med tech, which I don't even know if that
Yeah.
position still exists. And mostly it's like nurses now working in the nurse's office, but you just needed somebody to work with people and hand out medication. And I was like, okay, this sounds so out of my box. Why not? Um, but yeah, that's you. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that you may not know my side of this story, which is
Mm,
that I grew up working retail and like in the mall in the 80s and, Christmases in the mall in the 80s.
yikes.
And just long lines of people buying clothes and retail stores and I mean I did that like it was one of the first jobs I ever got as a kid, and then I ended up doing it like on through in college as well. And to this day, I say that working in retail taught me as much about being good in mental health as anything. Now, I grew up where in the 80s you worked for boomers. And boomers were serious. Like they had Rolodexes and they called people when sales happened. And like you didn't, a person, it's different than today. A person didn't cross the threshold of your department without being greeted and acknowledged as a customer and asked if they needed any help. Like they were, if you didn't do that, like some guy in his 60s was like standing beside you suddenly from nowhere going, you didn't greet that customer.
Mm.
Like they were, they were like,
How did you know?
you went, what? Where'd you come from? And so, it was all about like being attentive to a person's needs and listening and, making sure that they felt like, they're, you had heard what they needed, their need had been met, and was there anything else that you could do for them?
Mhm.
And like, if you think about that as a service model in any service industry, in mental health, in, coffee and whatever, like, I think that that's a model that served me on through the rest of my career.
Yeah, I totally see that. I would agree. Customer service is something that I mean, I tell my kids, my kids are older. I have a 15 and a 20-year-old. Um, and I tell them all the time that customer service is, and also human services, those are two jobs that I absolutely want them to delve into,
Hmm.
because it's going to teach them about everything they need to know, you know, on the back end of just about any job, whether it be
Absolutely.
working with a team or working with the public,
Dealing
both.
with difficult situations, having conflict just
Mm,
arise because it does. And being able to navigate those things, tricky situations, employment situations, all that stuff. And then the other thing that I did for the community college was work with the HRD department at Blue Ridge, um, which was the human resources development, which is basically the department people who had been dislocated from jobs or were looking to get a new career or job. They came to they got resume training, they might be able to apply for funds to go back to college to learn a new skill. They got, we set them up with all kinds of resources, motivational speaking stuff, like one of
wow,
my favorite jobs of all time.
what a cool program.
Oh yeah, and
You didn't have to be you didn't have to be a student there to get that
it's
service.
part of the continuing ed department.
Okay.
So, and now the you've got the job link that you see at the community colleges. That function of community college is typically is wrapped up in the job link services.
Mm,
So it's changed a little bit these days, but back in the day they called it HRD, human resource development. But it was basically aimed at community and working with people just like who you're working with
mm,
now.
mhm.
And I find all of this translates to, working in mental health and working, and I think that the difference, lots of people have have an idea about what mental health is. And either it's an informed idea or it's a layman's idea, or maybe you're a person who's worked in the field, but it depends on what end. You and I have the privilege of having worked in the kind of private pay sector where people had enough money to afford a really high quality program. And um, one of the things, at least at the time, that I remember about Cooper East that's not dissimilar from all these other concepts that we're talking about was we didn't give up on people.
Mm.
And former executive director Virgil Stucker is a good friend of mine and a mentor, and we took on his practice, and it is his one of the ideas that he gave to me as I came into Cooper Reese, at the time, was that we don't give up on people. What is your dream? What is the thing that gives you hope? What is the thing that you want to do that gives you purpose? And, like you and I were talking about this, it's like doing that with a person who suffers from some condition is no different than doing that with a person who's in their 40s looking for a new job and has no idea how to recreate themselves. It's like
Same thing.
it's the same question.
Mhm.
So when regardless of which of these persons you may be dealing with, and I know that you work with both, you work with individuals. All one common feature is they all want to work. It's like this person wants to work, they just don't know how, or they don't know what they want to do, and they
They're coming up against some barrier to work, and
some
that
barrier to
looks
work.
different. That
What's
looks
the
different for
what's the
each.
magic? Where's the portal? Where do you how do you get them from the one place to the other place where they've discovered something about themselves, or they've gotten to a decision making place, or confidence? Where's Tell us the secrets. Give us the secrets.
Wow, yeah. I mean, gosh, I would love to, because it's not complicated. It's not always quick or um linear, but it's not complicated to, work with someone who is just coming to you like, I'm pretty, one trick pony. I have only had one kind of job. I have a big black hole in my resume because of all different reasons. Maybe I've been in treatment for a couple of years or 6 months even. Maybe I've been raising kids. Um, Whatever it might, maybe I took a sabbatical. I just needed to travel for a little while, like whatever the reason is. But in the mental
I want
health,
to do something different, and I have no idea what it is.
for
I just
sure.
know it means service, or whatever. You've got something.
So you're working with people who are feeling like, yeah, I want to work, but I'm not really hireable. And PS, I need to make more money than I'm making now. Um, and PS, a lot of things. And so, I mean, I think the magic trick is learning how to talk to people to get them to understand that everything that they want is possible. And the word confidence comes up a lot. I think that is the confidence to be able to approach the job search um, with their head held high comes from having a resume that's forward focused, right? It's not about the past, it's about what you want in the future, and that's a really fun and tricky thing to do. Um, it's about understanding how to find work. Indeed.com is like my 18th favorite way of getting a job. There's like so many cool ways of getting a job. The way that I got the job at Cooper Reese is a very good example, just talking about it. But
Talking
under
about it, talking to your network about it. Yeah.
talking to your network, yeah. Um, that's a whole nother level of confidence that we have to address. Some people are like, that's pretty terrifying. So that's real. Um, yeah, getting to a place where they understand what they want to say in an interview, that they are just as much doing the interview as the person interviewing them, that they have to kind of think about work in terms of, is this right for me? Is this a good fit? Not like, will they like me? Am I good enough? But like, does this work for me? Is this even the job that I want? And how do how do you approach that? Um, and I think, also talking to folks about the types of jobs that they kind of think of when they think of work. We all sort of have a picture in our mind of what is a job, and that's that's something that is ingrained in us based on past jobs, what our parents did. What does job look like is conditioned.
You can get trapped there.
For sure, because there are 6 million different types of jobs out there. And when you think of job, you probably think of just a very small section of that. And so starting to like, I guess, demystify what is job is also part of that process, right? This isn't like super high level conversations, but it's amazing how it can be
It's pretty groundbreaking. Yeah.
illuminating to someone, to give them permission to not work in an office if that's not the type of job that they could see themselves being successful in, to not work 9 to 5 if their medication has effects where it gives them a hard time to wake up in the morning, makes it
Right.
hard for them to work a certain time of day. Maybe second shift is, and telling someone like, oh, you shouldn't go to work at 8. That's not good for you. And you just see them like be like, thank you. I didn't
Maybe
even
not the 5 a.m. in the morning, donut making job. That's probably not yours.
know. And so the coaching is over and over and over again, giving someone permission to be exactly who they are, where they are right now.
I got, this is I like this topic. Um,
Good, me too.
and I always have, but you know, the there are a lot of different writers out there who talk about various um concepts, both spiritual and otherwise, that have to do with work. Um, Parker Palmer's one, what do the way of vocation, kind of this wording. You've got um, Deepak Chopra writes a book, The Seven Spiritual Laws of Affluence, and he talks about dharma. It's like, what's your dharma? What are you here to do?
Mm,
And
purpose.
that, yeah, that question is, it's an inspiring question, and I think to some also a terrifying question because it's so big. It feels so big. It feels, like it's something that's inside of you. And, my own journey, of course, in employment and both witnessing the process for others and experiencing the one that I had as well was sometimes a little magical, like I talked about the community college job, which was a job that I I had applied for, but I had applied for a different job that I thought I was going to get and wanted more. Um, and but they offered me that job, and I was like,
Mm,
well, don't be silly, you know. And I like when I went to the interview, it was a trick because I went into well, I'll practice interviewing. It'll be fine, And I walked in, I was very comfortable because I wasn't worried.
yeah.
And then I walked in, and I also really liked all the people that were at the table, and the job sounded cool, and I'd never heard of something like that before. I'd never heard of that job before ever. Like in my world of like what jobs there were, this one was something I had never heard of, I'd never seen,
Hmm.
and kind of walked beside somewhere along the way, but just never came into contact with. And so when I took the other job I had applied for, I geeked out on, like 15-page resume with a sample of work and a bound booklet, and handed it in person and did all the this is
Wow, Todd.
I'm your guy, like I was
Yeah.
really serious about it. It was right when I was reading this book as well, and it's like, sometimes you think you know what it is, but the truth is that deep inside of you there's an alignment that you may not be aware of. So don't like shut down opportunities that show up, because they even if you don't know them, they may be in greater alignment with your purpose than you think these other things are,
Hmm.
because what you have in your mind is this projective image of what job is and where you belong and what you do. And so anyway, I
Absolutely.
took
You're,
I took this job, And I got back home and I opened the mailbox, and the other job sent me a letter saying they had canceled the search.
Wow.
And I was like, holy cow. I mean, it was like all within a period of hours that all that kind
That,
of came out.
that day that happened.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was
Yeah.
a
That's
it was an
amazing.
interesting thing to have occur in the context of vocation.
Yeah.
Do you get to see stories like does that happen on your side of things?
Well, I mean, what that's bringing up for me is
Serendipities,
absolutely serendipities, and also like the non-permanence of things too. Um, I was thinking about during while you were speaking, it was just um, remembering that when saying yes and taking a step towards something is, generally speaking, in the world of work, not a bad thing, even if it's not the thing you asked for in the first place.
right,
You know, if someone is giving you an opportunity and it doesn't seem terrible and it's in line with your values
right,
and a lot of other things, then you might be surprised at how that magic is actually laid in front of you for a reason, right?
right.
I mean, that is absolutely, I can relate to that so much.
Well, and how
And
well you know a job in the first place, right?
that's right, because we're right. What is job? What we know is um, what we're applying to, the jobs that we apply to, if we're looking at job descriptions online or yeah, I mean that's mainly what we get, right? Is a write-up that might be 2 or 3 pages long that describes a position. Have you ever written a job description?
Unfortunately, yes.
Do you
Many
do
of
you
them.
ever have you ever
I hate
experienced
doing it.
this like phenomenon that is really knowing that this job description does not paint the picture of what the job is?
Almost every time.
Because that's how that works, right? You
Right.
can't, it's hard to put it into words, certainly into a page or two or three. And on the flip side of that, as the job seeker, that's all you get to know is what's on those pages. That's what you're applying for. So yes, as doors open, you know, having the courage to walk through them um, can, I mean, it leads somewhere, right? And the mystery of it and the like, if you can get excited about the mystery of it, if you can get kind of like on board with like, you know what, I have goals. I don't know how I'm going to reach them. There's not a clear path quite yet. Those goals could change. All I know is that I want something right now in my life that I don't hate.
Right.
You know,
Well,
if
that
somebody gives you an opportunity and a door to walk through and you don't think you're going to hate it, why not say yes? Yeah.
well, and I think that I'm a one of the other sources is appreciative inquiry, David Cooper Ryder, which is a lot about asking questions, asking a good question or asking the right question. It is has to be forward focused, like, it's like I'm looking for a job I don't hate. It's like, well, let's frame that in the positive. I'm looking for a job I like, you know. And there's a shift in the mind that occurs when you start doing that to yourself. I got trained in the methodology in order to like be able to, facilitate it with organizations and do that sort of thing. So when I started, when your mind starts processing that as information, it's like, oh, look at all the statements I use that are not positive, that are not, and I'm positively framed as in, if I don't want you to think of a big red apple, I'll tell you to think of a banana.
Mm,
If the mind can only construe of a positive image.
mm, yeah.
And so I want something that I don't hate. Hate's the operative word there. And you find people, I think that you see
That's
this, and that's why they
that's
come to
where
you
a
is
lot
because
of people are. Yeah.
they keep landing themselves in new things, but the new things are not new. They're just the same thing recycled and they hate it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, more than being able to identify a job that you don't hate, we have to work with the language that's in your mind for a minute.
Mm.
And I think that, that sounds to me like a lot of the work, because what you're doing is like, what do let's not decide that we know everything first. You don't know everything. So we got to figure out what we don't know. How do we figure out what we don't know? And the way that you do that is you start asking questions, right? What is your favorite question to ask people?
Um, Good question. What is my favorite question to ask people?
Or maybe what's the question that you find that stumps people, like that is just like, the whole forest for the or the if the tree falls in the forest, it doesn't make a sound, that causes a person not to have an immediate answer, like,
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of like when I start working with people, kind of asking what their favorite ever job was, or like what did they want to be when they were a kid. Like really kind of like get them back into a place of like giddiness. Like for me, one of my very favorite jobs that I ever had was as a summer job. I literally worked there for 2 months at this place called Natorps in Cincinnati, Ohio, where it was a plant center. I got to help people pick plants for their gardens, and it was outdoor work and it was physical, and I, just loved it. I love hands-on stuff and I love plants. This was my favorite job ever, and that says something about me. I'm not sure what it says, but when I have that conversation with my clients, it allows them to get a little like to take off a little bit of that like whatever the heaviness that they're feeling right now, and to just be in their like dreamy, almost childlike space of, yeah, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Tell me about that. How did you end up, doing this one job? And then kind of working through their resume with them if they have one. Most people have a resume, most of them are trash, but if I'm being honest, that's like sort of the first thing that we do is like rework the resume, make it readable, make it um keywords stand out, that kind of thing. But going through these jobs, like, did you like that? Like, tell me about this job that you had when you were, 20 or whatever. Um, what was that like for you? And just sort of letting them remember. And
yeah.
it's amazing how if you can do that, if I sit with someone for an hour and go through their resume, and it's not about, the future yet. Right now, it's just like, tell me about work for
Who are
you.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, what's their experience been? Um, we can start to pull out really clear pictures of what they want. And more importantly, what they don't want, or just as important, what that sales job that you hated.
Okay.
How can we
Right.
talk about that on a resume so that it doesn't look like you're really good at sales, right? If your resume then is forward focused and you're giving it to someone in a company that wants to hire you and they have a sales position for you, you're making it look like this is something that they want to hire you for.
Yeah, which is what you might do if you think you just need a job.
Everybody thinks they just need a job.
Right.
That's what everybody does. We all do it. I'm serious. Like we all kind of have this like way of approaching work to some degree. I mean, it's, different for everyone, but where it's like, how do I just make myself sound like
Amazing.
someone that you want to hire?
Right.
And how general is that, Todd? Just someone that you want to hire. I
Well,
just
it's stacked against you in the first place. I mean, honestly.
But if you can write a resume and learn to talk about yourself in terms of what you think you are good at and what you want, what really like lights you up and um gives you purpose. makes you want to get out of bed in the morning in time to take a shower, take your meds, eat breakfast, say hi to your mom, whatever the things are, and
Right.
get to work on time. I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? To have a job that you can do life around
Mm.
and you enjoy it.
And gives you life.
It gives you life. It's
Doesn't take it
part
away
of
from
your
you.
lifestyle. And that's something I think too that, you know, I talk with people a lot about is that your job is so much more your lifestyle than you realize. It
Well,
is
you spend a
so
lot of
much
time
of your
doing it.
life. Yes, it is so much of your life. Um, it's okay to approach it in terms of what do I need and want out of this position, not just will they hire me. Um, that was a long-winded
No, I
answer.
like so many of the things that you're saying, including let's go back to a story that your childhood. What's your favorite thing? Um, I think it's Parker who has the he uses this quote, which is when in doubt, turn to wonder.
Mm,
And it's talking about this asking a question that tricks them, it's all about tricking the mind into a place where it doesn't feel trapped,
yeah.
where it can be creative. And I think that I know that people who suffer from mental health conditions feel trapped for all kinds of reasons. And then
Mhm.
there's they reach this place where it's a job, and a job means purpose, and a job means responsibilities. And it's terrifying. The truth is that contemplating this thing for your life is terrifying. Um, this is something I'm going to spend a lot of time doing. It's kind of something I'm going to have a very intimate kind of relationship with, because I'm going to spend, as many days with it as I do with a spouse or a family or a partner or my dog, or my garden, right?
Yeah, and this is coming up a lot actually with people that in my world, that if someone is needing to sort of step out of their day-to-day life and really just like work on their recovery, which is, a lot of programs really require you to be fully immersed.
Mhm.
That I work best with people who are sort of coming out of that and back into their lives. And so there's like this bridge, right?
Right.
So you're not like, and now I'm back on my couch, in my familiar couch. You're like, okay, and now I have this new purpose. And that is a job in my community with all the things that I just learned from this,
Right.
program that I just,
And I'm going to integrate
immersed
them.
myself in. But what's coming up a lot recently, I'm having a lot of conversations about this, is this idea that there's time has been lost, and that
Oh, wow.
people, especially young people, maybe in their 20s and early 30s, feel like their other folks their age are way ahead of them, in terms of their timeline for career,
Right.
and maybe other ways of connecting with their community. But that fear that you're talking about, that terror is also connected to feeling like I have to do it, I have to do this yesterday, I have to
There's a
do
little
this.
FOMO in there,
There's a little FOMO, and I think just like comparing
living
themselves
life
to
by
others.
comparison. Yeah.
um and so yeah, that's a
Media
lot
doesn't help.
to
Social
do.
media doesn't help. I think that problem.
Oh, you are spot on with that. We all think that everybody else has the life. They're the lucky ones.
Yeah. I don't have like I'm very grateful for where I found myself to be here in my 50s. I enjoy what I do, and I'm super grateful for the opportunities
Oh
that
man,
I
that's
have.
great.
But I'll say this: there was a time when I was younger. I was like, Look at those consultants out there running around the country all the time, traveling to cool places. And now I'm that consultant that does that. It's
Now you're that
exhausting. I'm like, I'm tired. I don't want to go anywhere. I want to still want to stay at home. Another conference? No, not another conference.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like it's greener that grass on
Mm,
the other side, but
no doubt.
remember that those people are working too. Remember those people go through daily struggles. I love the my one of my favorite quotes is what do you do before enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. What do you do after enlightenment? You chop wood, carry water. Like work is still work. Life has its ups and downs. And you're still going to have problems to deal with and stuff to work. That's life. That's what it is. I think social media causes us to believe in this magic moment when all problems are solved and everything's hunky dory and rainbows and
Mm,
flowers sprout out of the walls. And you don't have another problem ever in your life. And it's like that. It's a falsehood.
mm.
You
I
know.
mean, I get trapped in all of that too. I will say that I feel grateful to be in a profession where I really am very aligned with the journey as the purpose.
Yeah.
And that there isn't
Absolutely.
like a I've arrived moment. I don't ever want to be like, I did it.
I did it.
I've created exactly the world and that I wanted, because then what do I do?
Right.
You know, so there's
Okay.
kind of always got, yeah, shoo, all done. Um, so there's got to be this like a little bit of a passion for the process. And because I have that and I can talk to people about it, um, it can really inspire
Yeah.
folks who are just like, I don't know, everybody else is already there. I'm like,
Oh, they're
but
not.
where?
Right.
Think of all the things that that I don't know. Think of
Yeah.
all the ways in which you are have worked on yourself, and that I haven't had the access to or the time. Um, how am I better than you? How is that person better than you? Um, yeah, that the process, the journey is the purpose. The journey is the point.
Yeah. And that yeah, life by comparison is not a fair measuring stick. It's not an appropriate measuring stick. It's like
Mm,
the only person you need to be satisfied with ultimately is yourself. And if you can start there, the rest will probably follow.
that's the work for sure.
Yeah, that's the work. And the work, the work is lifelong work.
Yeah, never ends.
Lifelong work, and you don't want it to be otherwise. You don't want to be done. I have a very good friend that I've known for years, and he who had a very incredible kind of spiritual journey the latter half of his life, and I got to talk to him about where it kind of began for him. He's like, well, I worked for this corporation. I had risen to the top of their management levels. And I remember walking across the stage, receiving an award for the work that I had done and the level of performance I'd achieved. And I received my reward and I gave my little speech. And the moment I stepped off that platform on the other side of the dais, I had the most, I had the most enveloping sense of despair
Just
I'd ever
tank.
had in my life.
Wow. Ooh, I just got the chills.
And didn't know what to do with it. Like you know, knocked him off of his feet. And what he turned to as a result was like this, very deep and meaningful and personal journey for himself. And, went and traveled and studied and did other things and left the company and did completely other work, all those things. But, I think it's exactly what you're talking about. We're, and this is important. This is an important piece, I think, for frankly anybody no
Mm,
matter where you are, what kind of conditions you're dealing with, or what kind of situation you're in, that a lot of what we have in our mind are projections. And I think it's not bad to have active visions of the future and to like feel positive about the thing that's going to happen next. But if you start living too far ahead of yourself, you start creating pictures that are inaccurate representations of what it is that's going to actually be there. And then when you
No doubt.
arrive, when you arrive, you're like, you feel disenchanted with the whole thing. Like, wait a minute, this has got none of the, this is not the color, shape, or size of anything that I had in my mind when I thought I was
Mhm,
going to arrive here. I arrived here, and all of a sudden, it's not what I expected.
mhm,
And so there's I, just this whole going back to the things that have been, you're talking about asking people about what would, their childhood and what was their favorite job and all these other things. There's this, there's a living space that's there that
mhm.
doesn't allow you to get out ahead or get too far back. It's a feeling. It lives inside of you. And if you can follow that feeling, I think that what shows up for you is going to be a lot more representative of what's going to make you happy.
No doubt. No doubt. And, to set goals for oneself is such an important thing. And also, we, you know, I totally agree that there should be flexibility. And that just goes back to this idea that the goals that you're setting are just simply based on what has been conditioned to you as what is possible.
Right.
You don't have any clue what's possible until you experience it. And very often our paths, I mean, I don't know anyone, Todd, that like set a goal for themselves when they were 20 and that
That
like
was I
that road
mean,
was laid out in front of them exactly as they thought it would, because we know what we don't know. And so just to sort of embrace the process. Yeah, same stuff.
yeah, I think that I mean, there's a couple of people out there, they seem to have found something and it was the thing they did forever. I may have known a couple of those people. They're very few and far between. I'll say this though too, like don't be too hard on mistakes. Like if you went out and you did something and even maybe you did it again and you hated it and you're like, why do I keep making the same mistake? It's like, I don't know, maybe because you weren't done with it yet, Like don't don't toss them out because they're valuable. Like they say things about you that are really, really important. So pay attention, just like you were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like the deep existential meaning of what life is all about, the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. It might be tied up somewhere in your job as well. Like you're answering those questions when you go work.
Well, I
Because
told you, my passion is in health, and it has been my whole life, and I never really knew how that would manifest. I thought maybe I would be an herbalist or a PA. Actually, while I was working at Cooper East, went back to school and studied public health. Um, it was interesting that I ended up in mental health. But, that was not necessarily what I thought of as health, right? Or like what my goals around work that are health related were not bent towards mental health. But one thing that I have discovered that I feel very passionately about is that, we talked about is you're such a huge part of your lifestyle, and your lifestyle can really uh, trigger good or not so good mental health, right? So in talking about that, you can kind of consider job as a baseline for health. We talk about like what are you
I
eating? Are you
like that.
getting enough
The job
exercise?
is a baseline for health. I love that quote.
Like if you, yeah, it feels as if it's one of the like 4 or 5 baseline things that we need to think of if we're struggling. I mean,
Right.
all of us, if we're struggling, to kind of think about like, do I get enough sunlight and exercise in my life? Like those things that are baseline for health. Like, what am I putting in my body? Do I get enough connection in my community? What do I do for work, and how does that make me feel?
Wow. Deep questions. I think
Deep
we could spend a lot of time.
questions.
Yeah, deep questions. And then, people are gonna listen to this episode and be like, "Oh my gosh,
We did get
it's
deep.
back now." Oh
Ah,
man. Well,
that's great.
Beth, it's always wonderful to see you, of course, and this has been a ton of fun.
Totally.
I'm glad that you were able to join us today on the show, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll probably get to do it again at some point. But this has been WPVM 1037, the voice of Asheville Mental Health Matters. I'm Todd Weatherly, your host. Beth, it's been great to have you. I'll make sure we post links for your company so people can come ask you the deep questions as well. Great to see you.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it.